I know, I hate them, I never make New Year's resolutions because nobody ever keeps them. But these are a few New Year's audio resolutions you might actually want to make. Hey guys, it's Steve from Featherlight Studio, and I know, I hate them, I never make New Year's resolutions because nobody ever keeps them. But the more I got to thinking about it, the more I started to realize that there are definitely categories in the pro audio and studio world that are worth revisiting at least once a year. So these are my top 5 New Year's audio resolutions that you might want to consider not just making, but actually keeping. All right, so first up, and we all have these, is the audio mystery bag. And that is a bag full of cables and adapters and power supplies and all kinds of stuff that we got in here that we've had forever that we've never gone through. So this is stuff that you threw in here during a session or on a gig, and it's been in here, and not just things that maybe worked at one time, but stuff you know was broken, like things that broke at a gig and you threw it in here hoping that it would grow back at some point. So the problem with having bags and stuff like this around is it gives you a false sense of security. It makes you think that you have, a problem taken care of, when in reality, during an important gig or session, what it ends up doing is crashing the session or the gig because you spend all your time pawing through stuff thinking you actually have a problem solved. Like, I have an old mouse, a PS2 style mouse. Really, PS2? An old power supply from a monitor, a computer monitor, I don't even own any longer. A proprietary DC adapter to a proprietary end to an old Alesis third space compressor unit. Haven't had that in probably 15 years. Adapter to, from a car cigarette lighter to micro USB. Seriously? Actually, I might actually use that. Huh. See, and that's where they get you, because you think you might actually use it someday. And that one time that comes along and that you think, God, I could possibly use it for that, there's no way you're gonna find it because it's buried in some bag. So at best, go through the stuff you actually have, at least take an inventory and find out if it's something you have a real use for. And more importantly, see if it works. Or if it does work but you have no use for it whatsoever, either it's outdated or there's a ton of other stuff, that's better equipped that you own now, whatever, repurpose it. Donate it to a thrift store or something so somebody that does have a specific use for it can actually use it. Next up is workflow. And this is a big one simply because it's cumulative. It's a lot of little things done over a long period of time, especially if you don't really check in on them, every year or so. A perfect example of that is a rack of some kind, whether it's a live rack or a studio rack. Something that looks well organized and pretty well together in the beginning can become a minefield and a rat's nest of cabling in pretty short order if you're not really on that kind of stuff. And that's simply because workflow is usually panic driven. It simply means that you solve one problem because you have it at the moment, and then you move on to the next problem. And then you cobble together a workflow that actually works pretty well for you. But this is a great time to go through how you do stuff, how you have all your gear plugged in, how it actually functions, and how you use it. Is it convenient or does it just work? That's a really big difference. So think about how your gear is actually connected and how you interact with it. And then determine whether or not that's the best workflow for you, or maybe now's the time to change it. All right, next up, and I'm just gonna say it because we all hate doing it, and that's updates. Nowadays, more often than not, when you update stuff, you have a rat's nest of new bugs you have to learn how to use just to get back to a working studio setup. And it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a small home studio all the way up to a commercial facility, we all have to deal with updates. And we also know what it's like to try to get back to square one, get frustrated, and then just want to take a sledgehammer to everything. The first and most important rule of doing any kind of updates on your computer in the audio world is simply don't do them all at one time, or your life will literally be a giant steaming pile of audio frustration. It's generally considered easiest to start with your plugins since they're already on your system and they're working and you have a good idea of their behavior before you update them. Next up, it's time to move on to the digital audio workstation, but trust me on this, check with the manufacturers of both the plugins and the DAW first to make sure they want to play nice with each other. Anybody who's ever used Pro Tools knows exactly what I'm talking about here. And then finally moving on to your computer's OS. However, and this is a big one, I only recommend doing this if you are many versions behind and you're running into a lot of compatibility and performance issues. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be updated to the current OS on either Mac or Windows. Oftentimes brings more problems than it's worth to be on the cutting edge of something like that. Most plugin manufacturers are not going to keep up with you on that regard, so it's going to take time for everybody to kind of land, you know, on an even playing field. But if you're way back, I mean like, you know, 10 OSs back, it might be time to consider updating your stuff simply because it keeps your gear relevant. So if you're going to do that, like I said, do it one at a time, wait, see how it works, and then move on to the next update. All right, next up is plugins. And we are all guilty of this. If you've been recording for any length of time, you have a ton of plugins, both promotional, and then you've got some that are perpetual, you got some that are on, you know, subscription. There's a mountain of them. And eventually what you end up with is just this huge haystack of stuff. Some functional, some not. Some you got back like in the, you know, early days of recording. They've been around, you just haven't changed it out. And a lot of those plugins have big libraries and things that are hogging up space and that kind of stuff. So if you're not using those at all, or they're way past being supported, or the manufacturer went out of business or whatever, there's no point in keeping them. This is a great opportunity to go through each one and see which are the ones you use and which are the ones you don't use. Not just the ones that are like no longer supported or the companies don't exist any longer, but I mean the ones that you actually use on a daily basis. What are your go-to plugins? Really think about the plugins that you're using all the time, that are your just super dependable tools you use on every production. Really keep those guys up to date, and then go through the rest of your list and see, what can you live without? What isn't being supported any longer, but you're still keeping them around, making references to libraries that no longer exist, drives that no longer exist. This is a great opportunity and time to go through that plugin list. All right, and the last and probably the biggest of all the New Year's audio resolutions by far is to use what you already own. If you have GAS or gear acquisition syndrome, you know as well as I do and as well as anybody that a lot of times it's just easier to jump on Amazon and get something and order it to solve a problem than actually finding out where the three you already own are. It's probably tucked away in a bag or a flight case someplace or something like that. Like this old studio rack, we all have a ton of gear lying around the studio that we haven't used for a long time. This guy's got all kinds of stuff in here. We got an amp, an old headphone amplifier, an EQ, a D4. I had this on the road with me for years. Another example is this old soundbar I've had tucked away in here forever. I never had the original remote for it because I bought it used. I've always wanted to use this for the television playback, but I never did because I could never control the tone of it. And I only paid 10 bucks for it at a thrift store. It's in great shape and it's great quality. I just didn't have the remote, so no way to control it. All I can do is turn it on and off. So that's where this old EQ comes in. This is a stereo 15-band EQ, and from here I can control the EQ of the playback of this guy. So I'm just gonna take the analog output, the headphone output from the television, I'm gonna run that over to my patch bay. That just allows me to use the EQ for different stuff besides just the soundbar. And then from there, over to the soundbar, and that allows me to just turn the television on when I just need it real quick and I don't have the entire studio system running, and just have quick and immediate playback that doesn't suck. So I got a working soundbar that sounds great, and I have total control over the tonality of it just from pieces of gear that I had lying around the studio that I wasn't even using, and I didn't have to spend a dime. One of the other things that I was going to sell a long time ago because I just wasn't using it, this little mixer by Mackie, until I found out quite by accident that it does something super important. It does live screen and loopback recording in stereo into Apple QuickTime, and even the Mackie DLZ line can't do that. I know there's a lot of guys out there that use OBS and stuff like that to screen record with, but I like hardware and I like having a tactile surface to be able to get to everything and have it right there, you know, that I can see clearly. And one thing that was unique about this particular series, this is the Pro FX version 3 series of boards, and this is true of even the little guy, even the tiny little 6-channel one, all the way up to the, you know, 24 and 32 channel ones. But one thing that made these guys unique is they have a USB 2x4 interface and not a 2x2 interface. So what that means is that it can actually do its own loopback recording straight to one of the channels. This ended up being super handy, and I've used it ever since. I don't use it for recording audio here in the studio, but I absolutely do use it for screen recording because it's so convenient. So number 5, bags and boxes. Go through all those bags and boxes and find out what you actually own versus what you think you own. Number 4 is workflow. Is your stuff plugged in that way because it's the last problem you solved or because it actually works for you? 3 is updates, and I know we all hate doing them, but give some serious consideration as to whether or not you need to update your OS or not. Number 2 is plugins. Go through those plugins, old and supported ones, and find out which ones are still active. If not, clean out those old libraries. And number 1 by far is use the gear you already own. You might be surprised to learn that you can solve some problems, even expensive studio problems, with the gear you already have. Hey, thanks for hanging out, guys. I appreciate it. If this was helpful in any way, shape, or form, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It does help keep a young channel like this going and growing. It helps me make more videos like this. Stay safe. Be creative. Add a little creativity to the world. It could really use it. It's a brand new year, so take the time and the opportunity to clean some shit up.